Um, shall we introduce a little bit of ourselves?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So just want to welcome everyone, those who are listening in, and we can't see you, but we know you're there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for those who have been staying around for, I don't know, for a couple of hours. So just want to say hello from Singapore, a small country down in the tip of Malaysia. Yeah, and so maybe I'll start by introducing myself, and then I'll pass it on to uh, my colleague. So my name is Charlotte, and I'm practicing as a therapist in Counseling and Care Center in Singapore. I got to know this linking life storython through Sharon. Then when I first heard about it, I thought, wow, such a beautiful idea, and what a privilege it is to be hearing stories from different people. Yeah, and I imagine I might be inspired and touched by people's lives, and maybe even find courage for my own life's challenges as well. I was tuning in for 1 or 2 hours today, and I was really moved by some of the stories that were shared. So I'm really very grateful to be a part of this, and I'm really so excited to also be able to share. I mean, to be able share to hear stories from Audrey and Louis later as well. Yeah, so maybe over to you, Sharon.
Okay. So I'm Charlotte's colleague. I'm Sharon, and I want to thank Steve and NTI for giving us this opportunity to share our stories all around the world. It's quite amazing how we all managed to coordinate and come
Yeah,
together to share the stories. And like Charlotte, I also really appreciate some of the meaningful small stories that people have experienced in their lives, whether personally or through the work that they have done. And really quite a privilege also to have Audrey and Louis join us, because I think they readily agreed. So I'm very,
yeah,
very appreciative for them taking the opportunity that and the time also to share their stories with us.
yeah. Um,
So we had a pre-meeting, and we're
mm,
gonna have invite Audrey to share first, and then after that, what we'll do is the three of us are witnesses to Audrey's story, and then we'll share what stood out to us before we go back to Audrey, and then Louis will do the same format also for the second half of this hour. Yes? Okay.
yeah. So maybe for a start, shall I introduce Audrey, and then Audrey can kickstart us with your story. Um, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, which is that I know that there are people tuning in, and you may not be able to participate. So feel free to share with us if Audrey's stories and Louis' stories connect with you, resonate with you. Feel free to share with us how their stories kind of touched you by emailing them. I think the Narrative Therapy Initiative will be sharing their emails as well. So I think we'll love to hear from you as well. Yeah, so right. So let me just introduce Audrey. So who is Audrey, and why did I invite her to share her story? Audrey is a very, very dear friend of mine. I've known her for about coming to 20 years, since junior college days. And when I was thinking about Audrey, a few phrases and words came to my mind. So I'm going to share some of these words. Yeah, formidable, nothing is impossible, never give up. In Singapore, this term never say die spirit. So as powerful as some of these words, phrases sound, Audrey at the same time is someone that I associate other words with, such as humility, humanity, being human. So she's someone who's not shy to also acknowledge her vulnerabilities and her struggles, and to seek support when she needs. And of course, she's also someone who readily reaches out to support others as well. And I definitely have been a beneficiary of her support. Yeah. So one of the reasons why I thought of inviting her to share with us today is because um, I was particularly struck by how Audrey was navigating her business challenges in this time of COVID situation. Yeah, I imagine many one of us are very aware of how the economy is being so affected. And yeah, so Audrey was sharing with me how she carved out a new business strategy in this 2 months, yeah, and kind of turned and kind of helped her business sustain. Yeah, so I was really inspired by that. And more than that, I was also really inspired by Audrey sharing about the sense of support and camaraderie she has experienced and in the people around her. Yeah, Audrey, are you in? Okay, right. Okay, so yeah, so that's why I thought it's amazing. I mean, it'd be great to have her share her experience today. I'm so glad that she readily agreed. I was surprised that she so readily agreed. So yeah, over to you, Audrey. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlotte, for the very, very nice introduction.
Okay.
It's, I mean, so my name is Audrey, and I'm a business owner in Singapore. I think business owners have had it really tough in the last 2 months because you can spend 5 years building up your business, but then you will lose it in 1 month because of all this, how fast things change. You simply cannot react. So yesterday, as I was trying to prepare for this, I think it struck a chord with me. I didn't know I had so much to say. And when Charlotte introduced me, I feel really touched because it's a bottling up of everything I feel. And so I want to thank you for the opportunity, Sharon also, for this opportunity to participate in the Storython and to share my story with the rest of the world. I feel honored to be part of this. It reminds me that I'm not alone in this. Today, my story is about the strength of the human spirit, and I will be narrating it through my eyes and through the stories of others. The story starts with the lockdown for me of our border neighbor, Malaysia. Within 24 hours, business owners had to scramble to find accommodations and build contingency plans. There are over 300,000 Malaysian workers who travel daily past the border into Singapore. Suddenly, their lives were just disrupted without knowing whether there would be a job for them or whether the company that they work for would still be alive in a week. Some of them had to decide whether they wanted to stay back with their families or would they still want to cross the border to come into Singapore for their jobs with no security of a job. I remember that night, we had some Malaysian workers and they decided to come in because they wanted to keep working for me. They love their job and I think they value job security, the ability to earn money and feed their families. So I remember the night of the lockdown, there was a huge jam at the causeway and my employee didn't cross the border until about 11:40. We were really nervous for him, but I will never forget what I saw that night. There were workers sleeping in the train stations and even we own a factory, right? So at the factory, there's a grass patch underneath. We saw people just sleeping on the grass patches and people just walking around aimlessly. They don't know what to do and they don't know what their bosses have planned for them. That really struck me because I felt like at that time, everything was going to change. And I knew that from that point onwards, we needed to be compassionate and humane about how we run our business. Within a week, Singapore began its circuit breaker measures, which is also another word for lockdown. Other than non-essential services like food and medical, all other businesses were asked to shut down without further notice. Airports were closed, planes were left sitting at the airport, and there were many businesses who suffered. For me, within a month, everything I built and saved in the last 2 years were gone. My business dropped 50 to 70% because I service a lot of hotels, I service airlines, and since these airports were closed, everything was shut down. It threatened the survival of my company. So I wrote on Facebook to share my emotions. And in these moments of adversity, we've had friends from near and far, old and new, reach out to us to give us a simple cheer. They checked in, they said, we feel you, let us support you. And we had the chance to visit them because I wanted to make the deliveries myself. As I visited, I spoke to them and I was blown away by their generosity and their support. I think one of the most amazing revelations I've learned from the last few months is that nothing can deter the power of the human spirit. even in my company, we've had so many opportunities to witness so many amazing acts of kindness. My drivers would do deliveries for customers, and some of the customers wanted to tip them $10. They didn't have to, they did it out of goodwill, out of pure kindness and compassionate for another human being. Customers would also write in personally to me to say, great job, I really love your product. And these things take very little time, but they mean so much to me. They're like waves pushing me to the front, you know, small waves, one wave after another, just getting me to where I need to be. And my employees in the factory, I've never seen them so happy. They're singing and just helping each other. They make eye contact, and when they do, they make it sincerely with each other, because they know that together we are stronger. And I think that's what we need to remind each other, everybody who's listening in, that we are all in this together as a community and as a nation. Together we are stronger. So let's stick together and try to use our sympathy, compassion to help each other be better. During this time on the business front, we've had business owners call each other, checking each other out. How are you? How are you doing? How can I help? And the funny thing is that in these times of hardship and social distancing, I feel closer to my friends and customers than I ever have been before. I think without the distractions of physical space or other decorative items or the physical environment, people hear deeply and they look at you with more intensity than ever. The truth is that the world and everybody, in the last 2 months, we've seen customers close down, we've seen factories shut down, and then employees coming to our factory to ask if there are jobs. Or we've seen people go through extreme hardships, loss of income, or the sickness of another family member. And I just want to tell everybody not to give up. Don't give up and just keep your head up. Because from adversity, strength and resilience is born. When you persevere, you find that an incredible transformation happens to you. Your heart becomes wider, your heart becomes deeper. You feel more emotions that you thought you felt. You feel more intense than ever before because you feel it deeper. Emotions that you never thought you could feel, you feel it because your heart becomes wider. And when you experience that, I think you live the best version of yourself. The best Audrey, the best Charlotte, the best Sharon, and the best Louise that you can be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Audrey, for sharing. So so heartfelt and so inspiring to hear. I wonder whether at this point in time, before we reflect, can we ask a couple of questions to further understand even more your story?
Yes.
Is it okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I feel free. Sharon and Louise also feel free to share if there's any curiosity that you have as you hear Audrey's story that you want to understand even more. Anyone would like to ask any questions?
Yeah, Audrey, I'm really curious as you shared about that feeling of watching your hard work kind of get almost washed away within a short space of time. That feeling, I mean, it sounded like pain and it sounded like loss. This is quite a heavy question, I guess, but how was that like for you as a business owner? I'm guessing you've had that feeling before. What was it about this experience that was special or different for you?
I feel frightened because it's not something that I can control. This market is beyond me, and every time I plan something, it disappears within 1 day. I could not plan. I could not foresee my future, so I feel a deep sense of fear. I think I would describe it as fear is a friend. It's just beside me here. Yeah, I feel scared. But it's very hard to be courageous. It's a very hard thing to be courageous and face the facts. But I think when you do, amazing things born out of it. Let me give you an example. If I was always afraid and then I don't do anything about it, right, I don't think I would be here today. I would think I would have been. I think my company would have closed down already. Yeah, we've seen people close down. It's not a joke. And I think when you start to face your problems courageously, you face it in the face, right at the eye, right in the eye. What is the problem? And then you fight it, you walk through the fire, then you become stronger out of it. And through that, you discover new things. You discover new friends, you discover new markets you never saw before, and you discover a new you. So there are many advantages to being courageous, but
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks, Luis, for the question as well. So I really also hear how, in spite of I mean, this word destruction just came when you share about how your business, what you have saved, just was gone, just like that. And I also hear you saying that sense of pain and fear and a sense of loss. All these are so real. At the same time, in your story, I hear the other side of the other aspects. I hear compassion. I hear humane. Yeah, I hear this simple cheer that gets people going. I hear acts of kindness. And just now you just shared in response to Louis' question, as you face your fear head on every day, that kind of supported you to kind of move from, not so much move from fear to something else. I mean, I know fear is still present, but it gives you the courage to move on. I mean, to continue persevering in spite of fear. Yeah, I wonder what else also helped you to yeah, what else also helped you to, what else also kept you going and allowed you to, you know, carve out a new business direction even in this period of huge challenges. Were there any other people in your lives?
I think the answer to that is the will to survive. In order to survive, this is what I had to do, and so I did it. But I think that, like an explorer, you explore markets, you explore things, or you explore emotions. Some of them work out, some of them don't. But you need to make that journey to find it. And I think I'm just reminded of a quote. This quote says that courage is not the absence of fear, but knowing that fear exists and choosing to go with it anyway. I think that's what this whole journey is about. And I want to say that more than just what I go through as a business owner, this applies to everybody. Your personal life, something you've been afraid to confront it. Your development, your career, anything that you want to do, you don't feel like you're living it through the true version of yourself, do it. Why wait? Why wait? Because your day is now, your chance is now. When? Otherwise, when will you ever get there?
I'm wondering whether I could come in also to share my reflections. I was actually very, very moved when Audrey was talking. And then I realized I didn't have my tissue with me, so I had to control my tears. But I think what really moved me was the spirit, a very strong spirit, not to be deterred by all the challenges that Audrey has gone through. I think Audrey, by virtue of the fact that she's running a business, has quite a huge appetite for risk. And she's probably experienced some major changes in her life to take on this business. But that's just an assumption. Maybe Audrey, you can tell me later. But I think with the COVID situation, I think it's really put to a true test to the willingness to take such risk, you know. And I think what really stood out for me that there are a lot of things in this time where we cannot control. But I think Audrey has chosen to take control of the small things that really matter to her, like the connections that she has with other business owners, like the connections she has with her employees, and you know, the reminder that she would need to still continue to be compassionate and kind to these people. And I think that that's really something that I have not seen before, you know, like in in business, it's always this is, again, could be my assumption, in business it's always a dog eat dog kind of environment, where there's a very keen competition. And what I hear from Audrey is that it's actually very different right now in the business environment, where everybody is coming together as a community to support one another. And I think that's very heartening. I think it really shows how, despite the adversity, that people can be kind and look out for one another and support one another. And it reminds me that this is something that I would need to do also, and to not just look for myself, look out for myself, but also to extend help to anybody that I think who could receive that help too. Yeah. But I'm curious, Audrey, is this something new to you to discover this about yourself? Do you think you had this skill with you even before the COVID?
So I worked in Singapore for 5 years, and then I went to China for 5 years, and I thought that I knew a lot about myself. And then I became an entrepreneur, and I thought I knew a lot about myself. And then now this COVID, I know more about myself. I realized that humans have a huge spectrum of emotions. And I think you need to go through crisis or challenges to find that out about yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, but I don't regret this period. I'm appreciative of this crisis because it makes me a better person. It makes me closer with my friends. And if I survive this, I would be stronger. If I don't, I would give myself a round of applause because I did my best.
Yeah. I guess I'm really curious about, what are the many other stories and experiences in your life that might have also supported you to experience this strong will to survive in the midst of so much uncertainty and fear, which could have stopped you from taking any step forward. Yeah, I'm very curious about many stories and experiences that you have experienced in life. And I'm also really curious about the people around you. What stories might they also be able to tell about Audrey that they might not be surprised at all as to how you have responded in this situation? Because I mean, personally, as a friend, when you shared with me what you have, how you have, in a way, handled this crisis, I really am not surprised. Yeah, because I guess I have known so many. I guess I have the privilege to know many of your personal stories and experiences, which allowed me to have a sense that this will to survive is extremely strong. But I'm also hearing that with this this unique situation and crisis, it has allowed you to know even deeper and wider the capacity that seems to be growing in you.
Thank
Louis,
you.
welcome. Louis, do you have something do you want to say something?
No, waiting for the lump in my throat to dissipate.
Okay.
You don't have tissue with you too?
I always have tissue with me, Sharon, but I need to reserve it.
Yeah, but I, maybe is it okay if I share a little bit more, reflect a little bit more? Okay. I guess I was really touched by like what Sharon mentioned about this compassion, this humanity, especially in the business world. Maybe also due to my own assumptions about the business money making world, that it can be quite cutthroat. So I guess I also need to look at my own assumptions. So it's really beautiful and lovely to hear the human spirit, the care, the support. And you shared something about how people are looking, your employees are having like eye contact, looking into each other's eyes, and really actively maybe cheering each other on. And that's how you experience from people outside, even your clients as well. Yeah, so I guess that's really something that really struck me and reminds me of how important it is to connect as a human being to another human being, and what that does for what that does for people. I guess we can never imagine the effects of that, the effects of just acknowledging someone that maybe I see in the lift, smiling and maybe just asking how are you doing. This small acts of acknowledgement, small acts of kindness, what it really does to people, how it might cheer someone, like maybe just for that moment. Yeah, and that's precious. So I guess as much as there's so much uncertainties, fear, but it seems like there's so much more humanity that you're experiencing in this period. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I wonder, any other questions or reflection from Sharon, Louis at this point in time? No? Okay. So maybe is it okay to ask Audrey? How was it for you to share and to also hear some of our reflections? And I think there's a lot of comments coming, in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of
Actually,
appreciation to Audrey as well.
I feel a great sense of relief to say it authentically, because people always say, "Oh, my business is okay, I'm fine," this and that. But I think when you speak truthfully, when you speak your truth, right, you do honor to yourselves, and then you do honor to other people because you open up your heart to them, giving them a chance to respond authentically to you. So I feel a great relief. And I really enjoyed this. I mean, thanks for giving me a chance to write this thing and to talk about this. I enjoyed it.
Most welcome. Yeah.
Audrey, there's a question from one of the person here. So where do you get your spiritual or mental support?
I'm actually not a spiritual person. I think it would be my family. Yeah, I have a very nice husband, I have a very nice son, my family, my mother, and they all spur me to be better. Sometimes I'm not always the best. I make mistakes. I could be bad-tempered or unsympathetic. And then they remind me that it's people first, then business. We are, after all, humans, right? No matter what business you run. So they help me to be better people.
Okay. So sounds like they're a very important part of you and your story of
Yes.
overcoming.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you think, Audrey, you have also contributed to the people that you value so much, your family?
Oh, but to say would be tooting my own horn, right?
It's perfectly fine, Audrey.
If they were here, what would they say?
I know what they would say, but I'm shy to say. They would say that they admire me and they don't know anybody who could do what I do. But I would say to them that you made me that way. Huh? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
no,
Wow.
I'll cry again.
Yeah, we can go on. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
what about them that contributed to this aspect of, I mean, for you to, I mean, how come you said you made me that way?
Because they are good people. My mother is very nice. My husband is a good man. My son is cute and caring. So they make me who I am to be better.
Okay. Yeah. And do you think that with your courage, your perseverance, your resilience, and even your story, how do you think that contributes to your mom, your son, and your husband?
I think it helps them to be better people.
Okay.
My husband used to be quite a complainer. If a little bit he would complain, but now that he see what I go through, he knows that that's not worth to complain about because he has had it worse. So
You have more whining rights.
Yeah. I was wondering, I know at the start you titled your sharing "Strength of Human Spirit." And as your sharing evolves, as our questions came, and as you continue to reflect, as we are slowly rounding up your sharing today, I wonder if there's another name that you want to add on to what you have shared today, to title, what you have shared today. What might you title this sharing today? This story that you have shared with us.
No, I think the strength of the human spirit is appropriate. It encompasses all the strengths: kindness, compassion, tenacity.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
It's a wonderful story. Wonderful title too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you.
And any last words about any last reflections about how this experience was for you before we move on? We probably have 3 minutes or so.
No, I'm fine. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, everybody who's listening in.
Thank you, Audrey. Please stay
Okay.
here, yeah.
Yes. So Audrey and Charlotte and myself will be witnessing Lewis's story now, and it's my great privilege to also share a bit about why I've asked Lewis to join us here. I've worked with Lewis for I think about quite some time, maybe a decade or so. Yeah, decade. And I think what really stood out for me is how Lewis has also grown so much in terms of her resilience, going through so much difficulties in her own life and having to face the challenges in her own life. I think she might say more about it later on. But I think what I also really appreciate about Lewis is her authenticity, and that she's very real and she makes no apology for her emotions. And I think her emotions are something very, very precious, and it has helped guide her even in the work that she does, being very ethical in the work that she does. And that's what really stood out to me. And because Lewis is a doctor who practices in the emergency department, a hospital in Singapore, and because of her work, she works very closely with patients with the COVID-19, and she also has some contact with the migrant population that has the largest number of COVID-19 here in Singapore. So we'll pass the time to Lewis and for her to share her stories, and I'm sure there are many, many meaningful stories that will come forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, for that affirming and really encouraging introduction. Am I clear? Like, can you guys, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, very clear.
Yes, very clear.
Let's go. Yeah, so there is that group of people that are particularly affected by COVID-19 in Singapore, and 400,000 of them live in very densely packed dormitories in a generally extractive, although legally regulated work arrangement. Their access to healthcare is generally poor. But I cannot talk about those inequities today. I would like to share 3 stories about the migrant workers that I have met or that my friends have met. The first story is shared by my friend, Dr. Hong Ying Xuan, who is here in the audience. Hello, Ying Xuan. Here it is. It's 2 a.m. in a hospital ward, and Dr. Ying Xuan is seeing a migrant worker who's been admitted for COVID-19. Like many, he's never seen the inside of a hospital before being bundled off to these sterile corridors, beeping machines, gowned up, gloved up, masked up strangers. He's heard things about COVID-19. Will he end up in ICU? Will he drop dead any moment? When can he return to work? Can he return to work? Maybe like many, he's hidden the news of his hospitalization from his family back home. But he has only one question for Dr. Ying Xuan, not about his health or his work or his future. With much urgency, he says, "Sister, where north?" Ying Xuan is confused by the language barrier, by his accent, and by the unexpected question. He tries to explain, pay. Oh, don't worry, brother. The government will pay for your hospital expenses. We are used to this concern about hospital expenses. And he says, no, north, pay. Finally, he whips out his phone to show her that his GPS compass is not working. North, pray. It's 2 a.m. in a strange new place. he's trying to determine the Qibla, the direction to turn so that he can pray towards Mecca, because he cannot wait until sunrise. The first story. The second story is a poem. It was written in Bengali by Mukul, a construction worker. It was translated by Shivaji Das and assisted by Gwili Sway. Immigrant Dreams by Muhammad Mukul Hossein. Ma, may I get a cup of tea? A warm cup of tea, red from the freshness of tea leaves and assorted with ginger and lemon. So long, Ma, it's been so long that you feed me. Do you still have that jar full of cookies? Do you still wait for me every morning and evening? Last night, I ate the last drop of payasam you sent and looked at the moon and the stars from the shelter of your lap. You smiled and stared at my black shirt and carefully combed my hair. You gave me $1 to enjoy the fare. I was so glad, like I am in heaven. But then the mobile alarm rang to break my dream, to wake me up on my hard bunk bed. Then I could not stop my tears to run. Ma, immigrant life filled with pieces of broken dreams, a life without smile and drenched in melancholy that takes me far from you as I reach closer to your memories. The second story. The third story. And the last story. It's a sweltering afternoon in the emergency department. I'm seeing an anxious young South Asian man with a list of physical symptoms that have been troubling him for weeks. I speak to him, I examine him, and I do the necessary investigations. They are normal. I explain that his symptoms are likely related to anxiety. He doesn't understand this. I look around in desperation and I grab my colleague. She is a stout, no-nonsense older woman who speaks his language. Saras, I said, please help me ask this young man what's on his mind. She looks over my shoulder at his chart. Ah, she says, he's just a boy. He's not 23 years old. 5 minutes later, the man is smiling and he looks relaxed. Happy with a job well done, I thank Saras, and she nods and she rushes away because she is a busy woman. I return to my workspace, but 5 minutes later, I see Saras bustle back into his cubicle with a bottle of ice cold water. Then a box of hot food, not Chinese food, but the sort of meal that he would eat at home. And then a folded mattress, because he will be waiting for hours before we discharge him. And then a pillow. In healthcare here, it's common practice to call migrant workers brother. And I have always insisted on calling them sir, because to me, the word brother has come to connote a common attitude of condescension for a person who is culturally stigmatized as being uneducated, non-English speaking, with a low pain threshold. Not all healthcare workers use it in this way, but often it carries that connotation. But by treating this man as a son, Saras gave me back the word brother. And that is the end of my story.
Wow. Okay, I managed to find some tissues. It's really quite moving to share these 3 stories. And I think I'll just start off first by just sharing my reflections, and the questions can come later. And also Charlotte and Audrey can also share later. I think what really stood out for me is then the first story was really about how the person was so committed to his faith. Yeah. And even though in a situation there was so much uncertainty, so much fear and panic, whether the faith was also something that grounds him. And it's not just a religious practice, but something that he's spiritually very connected to. And this really reminds me about how one's faith can be a way of grounding. A relationship with a higher being can be a way to ground. The other stories that really also stand out to me is also how language plays a big part in how we see people, how we relate to people, and how the term of brother is because sometimes in our local context we the men call each other bros, about how it's so informal, but there's a closeness to it. And I think that's something that really stood out in terms of how when one treats a patient or treats anybody, is about thinking about the relationship rather than just the formal ties or the formal roles that we hold. So that's something that stood out to me. I'm going to pause for a while to just give a chance to Charlotte and Audrey to say something before I ask questions. Is that okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Lord Louis, for sharing the three stories. I think the first story, I think one of the things that really stood out for me was wanting to really pay attention to what is important to someone. I guess sometimes in our daily hustle and bustle, we have certain assumptions of what people will care about. But in this example, at first I was also really curious, what does north and pray mean? Yeah, and then when it became clear, I guess it reminded me of how important it is to be curious about what is most important or what is really important to people, especially when we're working with, especially when we meet people that is different from us. I guess everyone is different in different ways. So I guess it really reminded me of being curious about what is important to people, even as we try to be helpful. And I also really appreciate how the second story about sharing from the perspective of the migrant worker, how life has been from his perspective, how he really longs and craves for his hometown, his favorite tea, and even his pining for his mom. I think it really reminded me of how I guess it's really a very humbling reminder of inviting me to remember that the people that I've maybe not quite seen in my daily life. In Singapore, it's not uncommon at all to see fellow migrant workers around. But I myself at times, I may not. There are times where when I see them, I walk past them, I may not even smile at them. There are times like that. Yeah, and I guess it reminds me of to remember that they too have their precious relationships, and it also reminds me to welcome them a bit more in my everyday living as well. Yeah. So thank you for sharing the stories.
I want to say that I have great respect for healthcare workers and social work. I think you guys do a fantastic job, and you do what you face humanity. I think life and death, pain and suffering. And I have two best friends, right? One of them is Charlotte, another one is Claire, who's from Australia. So she's a psychologist, and I think what you guys do is amazing. I have a question for you actually. We have a lot of, in my factory we have a lot of Vietnamese and Malaysians, and they come a long way to work, right? So Louis, I want to ask, in what you've seen so far in the hospitals, how are these people? I mean, you know, how are they? Are they doing well? How are you? How are you and your team? Are you coping well?
I can respond to that. Thank you for everybody for your reflections and for hearing the stories. Audrey, I think that a narrative, I'm also wary as I tell these stories of isolation, of faith, and of homesickness. I'm also wary of giving you only one narrative, because there are as many narratives as there are individuals times days of their lives, possibly, right? And much as I share about the melancholy or the isolation or the immense stress that they are under, I'm also aware that many of them are just kind of bouncing through it with the kind of formidable humanness that you yourself are doing. So for every one of such of Mukul's stories that I hear 10 of people who are just carrying on and just bouncily getting through life, you know, dancing, singing as you share. But I do see that, I think that to Singaporeans or to locals, we often think of us and them. Us is the person with the pink IC, with the national identity card, who has the rights of a citizen and enjoys the privileges of a citizen. And them is the green card, the blue card, anybody who's not a citizen. But within that group that we see as the other, there are all these people with all their stories and all their narratives. I guess I'm also cognizant that as countries go, although Singapore, there are many problems with their place in Singapore society, Singapore has also tried to safeguard their rights in some ways. And I guess, I don't know how to summarize what I've heard from people, except that I see a general stoicism, a general strength of character, thinking of their families and just pushing through. When you don't see what's going to happen tomorrow, just wanting to just hold on for the sake of your family because their livelihood is on your shoulders. That's what I see from the Malaysians that I've met, who've not seen their families for ages, as you say, who are living out of the same suitcase for months, right? That's what I hear from them. That's what I recall from them. I'm sorry, I've forgotten if you had another question. Possibly you did. How am I? Oh, I think that for my colleagues, yeah, many of my colleagues have found back our meaning, I think. Much as we are sweaty, sticky, and itchy, we have found back a little of that what we were called to do when we went to medical school interview and said, I want to be a doctor because, yeah.
Yeah. I think, Louis, you took much care in choosing these stories, but can you say a little bit more about how, what made you decide to choose these stories, and what does that say in terms of what you value as a doctor?
I wanted to share these stories because I thought about things that I had learned from patients who are part of this migrant population. I wanted to, I think that, well, yeah, I think that often, I think what Charlotte kind of mentioned about making assumptions, the assumptions we make about people, I impose that on patients, I impose that on others. And the assumption is often that if I only understand 5% of what you're saying, you only have 5% of content to say to me. But the fact is that I don't understand 95% of what you're saying. There's a whole depth to each person that I don't understand. And being in a cross-cultural marriage has possibly opened my eyes to that a bit more. Being not understood myself, and having people assume that I'm stupid because I don't know how to say things in that language, has opened my eyes to what I do to other people. And I was hoping today to kind of break through that 95%, to kind of try to reach across that barrier that communications, that language, that worldview, cultural perceptions forms, and to try and embrace that commonality so that it can become possible for me to call someone brother and really mean it. That's been the most precious thing to me in this process.
Okay. I really like the word that you use, embrace commonalities. Yeah. I'm wondering about, is that something that, Louis, you have actually been holding on for a long time, or is this something new because of this experience with COVID?
I think it's something that I've always believed, that in my faith, I guess it is that it teaches me that we're all created in God's image and we are God's image bearers. And therefore, every human being, no matter how rich or poor, capable or incapable, even how broken or how morally fallen they may be, is made in God's image. And therefore, it's something to recognize. The distance between us and another human being is actually not that great. And I always knew this in my head, but I think just the circumstances of COVID have made me have to come up and confront it much more, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So this idea about being reminded that we have to deal with not just patients but people, right? And that's the most important thing, to deal with people, and that the connection, the relationship is really important. Louis, how do you think the way that you go about dealing with people, how do you think that contributes to your colleagues, the patients that you work with, the people that you work with, not use the word patients, but the people that you work with? Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew that sooner or later Sharon will ask this question where I have
no,
to think.
I'm very predictable. How's it? 10 years of working with
me. It has
me.
been 10 years. Yeah. Meaning, like, how does that emphasis on dignity kind of affect people?
Yeah, your focus on dignity, your focus on valuing or centering people.
Yeah.
Well, look, how does that come through in your relationships?
I think it's clear that my beliefs, much as I believe in what medicine does, and much as I try my best to be a good doctor and a non-dodgy doctor, and I try my best to give you good medicine and good treatment that will make you better. Ultimately, I believe that it's the patient themselves. Like, this is your life. I'm just trying to support you to live the best version and the healthiest version of your life that you can. Whether that's a mental illness, a chronic illness, or an incurable illness that you're dealing with. It's your life. Like, I believe that even by listening, by being as present as I can be, and by caring about your version of events, like your narrative even, I believe that it's the only thing I can do at times, and it's the most important thing to do, actually, particularly in palliative care, because in many conditions where medicine has not yet found a cure, or its cures are imperfect, I think patients, my experience of patients is that they don't always want a cure, but we think that they want a cure because we spend very, very many hours like trying to get the cure. I'm sure they want relief. We all want relief when we are sick, but I think more than that, sometimes people want witness, want to be experienced as human beings. And if we as doctors force their narratives into our medical narrative so that we can give them a diagnosis, a treatment, and then bundle them out of the door, sometimes that takes it away from them.
So I think I wonder about these words that you just said, take it away from them. I wonder, in contact with the people that you work with, what do you think you've given them?
I've tried to give them the experience of being listened to. I've tried to give them the experience of being honored, of their presence and their existence being honored in some way. This is difficult when I don't agree with what they are saying, or if I am personally distressed by what I see that they are going through, which I feel is unnecessary suffering, for instance. But it is their experience, and over the years, I guess it's become easier for me to try to listen and learn.
Yeah.
Wow. Sharon, Louis, were you always like that? Or did it take some time for you to develop this kind of heart?
Working with Sharon has actually helped me because she modeled for me. Haha, I never tell you this before, Sharon. She modeled for me non-judgmental listening. And even though I am a client and in the medical world, I will be seen as a patient, right? I am somebody with a few problems, as she knows. But by inviting me into this into this space to tell stories, to be, by treating me non-judgmentally as somebody with a story. I have actually really learned that from Sharon over 10 years, I think, like the experience of just listening and being present, and of showing that unconditional acceptance of the story, even if you don't agree with the content of what is being told sometimes, or even if you think there's another way to look at it. She also reminds me, like, more directly, if I'm not if I'm not adhering to my own standards of being non-judgmental. Yeah.
Thank you, Louis. I think you've contributed much to me too.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And if I had to see you in the hospital, I'll feel very safe and very valued.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just wondering whether Audrey and Charlotte has other thoughts and questions before we come to the end.
No questions, but really deep appreciation and resonance with what you have shared. A few phrases that really caught my attention. You shared about caring about what is most important to people, and then especially during maybe especially during palliative situation, or maybe not. I mean, the experience of just being listened to and honoring people's experiences and perspective. I mean, that really resonates so much with me, and I really, I guess I really can't imagine what difference these beliefs and perspectives make for the people that you have been encountering and you will continue to encounter further. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that with us.
And I want to say thank you also. I'm honored to share and to hear what everybody has to say. And because by sharing, now you've planted that seed in me to listen to others more deeply. So I think that's how it works, right? Like waves, right? You plant a seed in me, I spread it to 5 other people. Your story, or what it means to listen. Then I think everybody becomes a better person, and in turn, the world becomes a better place.
Yeah. I think at this point also we can just kind of dovetail from what Audrey was saying, how this experience has contributed to all of us. I think I like the idea of waves and how waves ebb and flow, and how, you know, it can bring something precious to us. And I think Audrey's stories and Louis has definitely brought something precious to me, many reminders about how there's so many lives, so many multiple stories that I have not known before. And it's a good reminder for me to always keep my eyes open to listen out and to hear these stories and to continue to build on these stories. I like the idea, the image of a seed and growing the seed. And I hope I hope this opportunity, the seed will fall on good grounds, and it will grow a very strong, big tree, provide shade for people, you know, and provide nourishment for people. Yeah. Charlotte?
Yeah, it's just really humbling to be hearing so many stories today, and I hear this common phrase that Audrey and Louis used, these best versions of ourselves, and definitely, and your stories about other stories have challenged me to grow, to become a better version or best version of myself. Yeah, and that spirit of honor, that spirit of acknowledging people, that spirit of being curious about the uniqueness of different people's experiences and what is important to them. These are what I would hold closely to my heart. As I continue to meet people along the way. Thank you, guys.
Louis, do you want to say anything else before we end? You have the last word before Michelle comes in.
Okay. No.
No? Okay.
Are you sure, Lois? You have time if you want to say anything. Okay.
I'm happy. I must say that my last thought is that I'm really happy that Ying Xuan, my friend who gave me the story #1, is here today, because as we reflected on her story together, Ying Xuan, this is like your first steps into narrative medicine. I hope that this will be a healing and good experience for you, especially as you labor on in the wards. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. That was so beautiful. And there was a mention of emotion being precious. And I think that just stuck the whole time. There was such an openness to your, and an authenticity to your sharing that invited a lot of intimacy, and so many stories of resiliency of the human spirit. So thank you all. That was really moving.
Thank you.
Thank you all for the chance.
All right.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you,
Hi,
Stephen.
Steve.
Hi,
Thank
Steve.
you. I caught the tail end, and I'm really excited to get back and listen to the recording. It just sounded amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Lovely to
Great.
meet you all.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
Okay.
Bye. See you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay.